Yeah, we had our last exams today, so our guys are officially done with the semester, and it's really exciting time for our guys to really be able to hone in on basketball. It's been, a long, probably week and a half for them of finishing the semester with classes and finals and papers and final projects. They did a really nice job of that. Looking forward to seeing how they did academically, but for us, we obviously turn our attention to this last game before the holidays. Providence is a really, really good team. We learned that firsthand last year. They've got almost all their guys back from that team that came in here and beat us last year. I think they're a lot better than their record indicates. They've got a lot of dangerous guys on their team that can shoot the ball and drive the ball, play with physicality around the basket. It's going to be a really, really important game for us to play with toughness. First of all, mental toughness to be able to get to the next play and fight through fatigue. And then secondly, just a physical toughness to stand up to the physicality and the athleticism that they bring to the game. So just got done with our first practice session of the week. Guys did a really good job competing, going at each other. Now it's a matter of honing, a bunch of things that we want to do better. But this is our last opportunity before the holidays, to go win another game and to move forward. So it's a really important one.
Questions?
Yeah, the main thing about it, you touched on it there, but it does seem like that this trip, this whole weekend game on Saturday is about mentally handling this long trip, playing a solid team. That is far and away the emphasis of the week.
Yeah, and a very physical team, and a team with great size. If you remember last year's game, Snoop didn't play in that game, and they really took advantage of us, particularly at the guard spots. They were physical. They were bigger and stronger than us, and we got to do a better job than we did in that game, standing up to them. But again, it starts with mental toughness. Everybody talks about the physical side of it, and that's important, but you got to have the mental fortitude to say, we're going to do the things that we practice and prepare to do, regardless of circumstances. There's always, particularly when you go on the road, there's tough breaks, there's calls that don't go your way, the crowd's against you, but it's how tough can you be to hang in there as a unit, as a team, to go do the right thing, and that's something we're going to work on all week.
Do you use the Georgetown game at all? Because that's the last time you played a really physical team. I know what Providence does on offense is way different, but sort of those big guards, those physical front court players. Yeah,
there's certain teams you play and going into the game that because of the makeup of their roster, because of their style of play, there's an extra emphasis on the physicality, the rebounding, the play around the paint, similar to playing, a West Virginia in our league. You just know it's going to be a bloodbath, and you have to be ready for that. So that's something that we've emphasized from starting today in our film session into practice, and we'll emphasize all week.
What did you learn from the Purdue trip? Because that's a true road environment. What did you learn about your guys from that you can?
Well, I'll tell you that game is really a template for us in terms of how you go on the road and find a way to win in a hostile environment against a really good team. First and foremost, you have to withstand the assault that comes at you from the home team, the home crowd, the momentum that they may be able to build through making some shots early. And if you can withstand that, then you stay in the game. If you don't withstand it, then they go on a run and they're able to gain a really good working margin. And then from there, you've got to figure out where are the advantages within this game that we can have for our team, whether it's in a certain action on offense or defensively, a certain matchup. You've got to find those advantages, and you've got to keep working those advantages over time. And then in the last 5-6 minutes of the game when it's close, you got to take care of the basketball. You've got to be really, really solid on defense and not give them anything they don't earn, and you got to make your free throws. And those were all things that we did in that game on November 9th that we need to take with us on the road to Providence and go repeat there.
Do you feel like y'all have faced enough adversity this year to prepare you for games like this, the Big 12, or do you feel like you still have – they need to face a little – I'm not saying they haven't, but just do they need to face more adversity?
I think we
certainly – referee foul call, stuff that goes against you that you're –
Yeah, you you're going to see adversity over the course of the season. You don't always know when. You don't always know where. You think when you go on the road there's going to be more. We definitely, as a team, have, seen some twists and turns, not even just in the games, but sometimes in practice. And our guys have learned to respond better. Now, we're not all the way there yet. This is going to be a really good lesson for us, win or lose. And we're going to need to come out of this game needing to get better in a lot of ways, even if we're able to win the game. Now, it feels a lot better going into the holidays if you can win the game and learn some things from it going into just one more game before league play. But Providence is a team that, again, we learned firsthand last year. Their physicality, their aggressiveness is one that's a template for going at us, and other teams have utilized that. So we need to step forward and say, no, we're able to handle this and we can respond.
Do the guys understand, or do you feel like they do, that 9-1 sounds great, looks great on paper, but the mountain is just going to start getting steeper as y'all go? I mean, do they act like a 9-1 team, or?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways you can act. When you have a record like that, or regardless of what your record is. I think our guys have a very keen understanding that we do have to get better. Mm-hmm. And that the guys that have been through Big 12 play before understand that there's a ton of challenges coming up. And they also know that in the Big 12, there's literally no teams that you can just roll out there and just show up and you're going to win the game that way. You have to go take the game. And that's how this game will be on Saturday. So for us, as coaches, the biggest thing that we're emphasizing is there has to be a level of pride that our guys continue to grow in taking in the things that go into winning. And, we're not all the way there yet, Brian. I'd love to stand here and say, our guys got it. They got it figured out, and, and that, they're going to be able to just kind of cruise into continuing to win a lot of games. But as the competition goes up, our guys are going to have to really, really grab the bull by the horns and decide that, hey, this is what goes into winning and anything else is unacceptable. Obviously, our job as coaches is to promote that and to put that at the front of their minds, and that's why we just had a 2-hour war in the other gym.
What do you say to a guy like Gerald after last game? I mean, obviously, you need him.
Yep.
The potential is so high for him, but he's also still very inexperienced in terms of minutes played. But you said you make it sound like he's pretty hard on himself at times. How do you approach a guy like that after that kind of a game?
He's really hard on himself. I mean, that's part of his challenge right now. Is he's very cerebral, smart kid, and he can tend to overthink things. I would say on our team, he's one of the least selfish guys. Very, very unselfish, very team-oriented. He cares about his teammates. He doesn't want to let his teammates and coaches down. And right now, he feels like he's doing that sometimes out on the floor, and that's paralyzing him. I think first and foremost, he needs to get back to starting on the defensive end and being a guy that can defend multiple positions, a guy who gets his hands on the basketball, a guy who rebounds at a high level. That's what he did when he played so well at Purdue. And that's who he needs to be on Saturday for us. I mean, Providence had a guy in Alpha Diallo who came in here and kicked our butt last year. 6'6", 6'7", strong, plays a 3, plays a little bit at the 4 when they go undersized. And, that's a guy that G needs to be able to say, hey, I'm going to focus my attention on doing my absolute best on him. I think with guys like that, when you focus on the things that you can control, like your defensive effort, like your focus on the details, then some of the other things like making shots, making plays, they tend to come for you. But he's still a young guy in terms of experience, and he's in there working on form shooting right now. So he's still, doing a lot of the things he did last year when he wasn't playing, where he was doing extra workouts after practice and after shoot-around, except now he's playing. And we do need him to play better, and he can play better. I think he has very supportive teammates, very supportive coaches. But as I told him today, if you go out there and you play with a level of aggressiveness and an attack mode mindset, you are going to play more. And if you don't, you are going to play less. And that's for any player.
After the way you guys shot the ball against Central Michigan, that was your best three-point shooting game of the season. Do you feel like the three-point floodgates have finally opened?
I wish it worked that way. I mean, it'd be great if you could continue to kind of steadily rise. We, at one point, were shooting around 30% from the three-point line. Now we're, I believe, at 34. We got good looks in that game. So that's what we can really focus on, is getting good looks for our shooters and them shooting, stepping in with confidence and shooting the ball the right way. Obviously, Jace making 7 out of 10 is huge for us. I do believe we have a group of guys, if they can continue to share the basketball and create good looks, we can shoot a good percentage from three, even better than 34, what we are shooting. The goal would be to creep over 35, and if we could be in the high 30s, that's terrific. But again, it's all situational. If you're playing a game and you've gone, let's say, 1 for 10 or 2 for 11 from three, now it's time to get in the paint and create something else for your team. I thought the nice thing about our last game is that our guys had a very good blend of shooting the three-point ball when it was wide open, but then also getting in the paint, and we got to the foul line much more.
Coach, you talked about your team handling things better mentally. What are some of those things that they've actually done, that they've shown you that they've gotten better at, and what do they need to get?
Well, we need to, we say response is your ability to focus on the next most important thing. And, I think we've made some strides with that since June 6th when we had our first workouts this summer. But, we've got a lot of progress to continue to make, particularly when you get in a hostile environment. I thought our guys responded well throughout the game against Purdue. But, now we got to go do it again. We've got another road game coming up on Saturday, and there'll be plenty more after that. I think our ability to come out of halftime with a true commitment and motivation to do the right next thing over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 minutes to start the second half is critical. I tend to think sometimes our guys, if the first half didn't go perfect in their minds, or even if it did, sometimes there can be some lingering thoughts about that first half. You got to move beyond it. You got to focus on the next most important thing. And that's the message that these guys are hearing from us. But when we'll really, really have it is when they're hearing that from each other in surround sound, so that there's nowhere to turn without hearing this is what we're about.
It seems like rotation-wise, you've got your starters and then Andrew, and then maybe Kai kind of coming on there. But is it challenging at all for you to know you're going into games where you're almost playing a hot hand with a lot of those guys that are coming off the bench?
Well, the way we look at it, we have 3 5-men in Jericho, Royce, and Will, and we really believe that Will can continue to develop and hopefully earn more time. Now, obviously, Royce was terrific in the last game, minus the turnovers. We showed some tape to our guys before the game, or before practice today, and he was the domino of the game. He had a 1.3 rebounding interval. Did a good job drawing fouls. He played with a real motor. Again, if we can keep from throwing the ball to the other team, then we're really in business, because he gave us a real lift and an energy. So if we can build that in guys like him, he's not going to have 8 and 12 every night, but to be able to contribute, that gives us a little bit more of a rotation. I do believe as freshmen, Kai, Donovan, Will, they're all really making strides, but they're all going to continue at times to be up and down. And depending on the makeup of the game, for instance, Central Michigan, we're turning the ball over a lot in the first half, and so we got to get a lineup out there on the court that isn't going to turn it over as much. You got to go try to win the game in the moment, but I do think those guys have shown some strides in the practice gym, and as they continue to get opportunity, I think they'll get more comfortable out there.
Do you still feel that Matt has been your most consistent guy?
Absolutely. Yeah, he's
Here
been.
at the end of December.
Yeah, he's been our most consistent guy. But Matt is a guy that I think there's 2 components of what he does that are critical to our team. Mm-hmm. One is how he plays, and one is how he leads. Mm-hmm. And the play has been terrific. But at the times when he's not playing at a 10 out of 10 level, his leadership has to still be at a 10 out of 10 level. And I think Matt is a guy that is getting more and more comfortable with saying the uncomfortable things that need to be said. But the reality is, for our team to be our best, there's no way around it. We have to be driven by the key core group of players on our team, and there's no one that's more core to our team than Matt Coleman.
Out of those 10 levels, where do you feel like Matt's leadership is at right now?
Oh, that's a great question. I think Matt's had some moments where he's been phenomenal with leadership, and I think he's had some other days where he's not been great. He's still been good, but again, he has to continue to keep the pedal to the metal with that, and it's fatiguing. I mean, think about what Matt does. He's a best defender. And the plays, the game's going on, and some guy's making a bunch of threes on us, and we say, okay, Matt, you got to take him. So he's got to do that. He's got to spearhead our offense, get us into offense, get us organized, be the most talkative guy out there. Now we're also asking him to be a guy that demands more from different guys. So it's a lot, and he has never been any worse leadership-wise this year than pretty darn good. All right, but what we're asking is for him to be at a high level. Somebody sent me a video the other day, and it was a great coach, great college coach talking, and he said there's three players that or three people that can never had a bad day of practice, and he said it's the head coach, the point guard, and the best player. And so that obviously that applies to our team like any other team.
How much of the improvement for Matt is just being able to stay out of foul trouble and be able to remain engaged in games? That's
a great point. I mean, when he picks up fouls, it does, just like any other player, it disrupts a flow, it disrupts minutes, and it takes away from his aggressiveness. So he's done a much better job through 10 games of staying out of foul trouble. He's had a couple games where it's been a little bit of an issue, but last year at this time, it was probably about half our games. Or at least 40% of them, where he was missing significant time, oftentimes in the first half, because of foul trouble. So that's big. We want him to be aggressive. We want him to get his hands on the basketball, but he absolutely, needs to stay out there on the floor. So he's done a better job of that.
And that makes his defensive improvement overall more impressive, right? Because he's doing it without fouling.
His defense has been terrific, and he doesn't get a lot of, I think, attention outside of our program for it because he doesn't have like gaudy defensive numbers, but one statistic that Luke Yaklitz brought to our staff that in our program that's terrific is what we call points against per minute, which is basically how many points do you give up per minute that you're in the game. And so the goal for our team, any guy on our team, is .33, which is very good. And Matt has consistently been under that. I think for the season he's under .2. So. And again, a lot of times, there'll be a guy who's just kind of getting his game off, and we say, okay, Matt, you got to take him. And what we really need, and this is when we become a great defensive team, is for Gerald and Courtney and other guys on our team to step forward and say, I'm going to hold the guy that I'm guarding under .33 per minute. And obviously, it's just a mathematical thing at that point. Now you're really, really guarding people.
And in the NIT, that guy was Courtney that you were putting, and it seems like he hasn't quite been on that level so far this year.
Well, our last 3 games of the season last year, we were at a high level defensively. The guys were flying around, and we call 3 stops in a row a kill, and we got, I believe it was 27 kills in 3 games. Really, really good job of just flying around, getting our hands on the basketball, and it was really a team effort. Everyone was out there contributing and helping each other. And as you mentioned, Courtney up in New York did a phenomenal job on a couple different guys. So when you start the season, obviously at the front of everybody's mind individually as a player is all the things that you want to do as an offensive player. And our job as a coach is to get them to share some space up there with defense. And again, Matt's done a phenomenal job of that. And all of our guys have at times. It's just a matter of being more consistent and from the opening tip, making sure that number 23 from Central Michigan, who's their best three-point shooter, doesn't get a wide open shot up in their first possession. And that's obviously an area for growth for us.
Shaka, just a little off topic, but Jared Allen's progression from when you had him to where he is now, how enjoyable has that been for you to watch? And you always talk about like guys will be at 29 years old, he'll hit it then. Yeah. He's got a long way to go, but how enjoyable is it for you?
No, I mean, that's the exciting thing, but also I guess the humbling or challenging thing about being a college coach is you know you're not going to coach a guy like that when he's at his best, because they just don't stick around college very long when they're that talented. But I'm not surprised at all with how well he's doing. I mean, he's a guy that he always loved to learn. I mean, and that is such a undervalued trait. He just wanted to get better, and he would look at you and he'd want to know why. But you would tell him something once or twice, and then he could just go apply it on the court. You didn't have to keep telling him. You didn't have to keep reminding him. You know, he had still has a very, very sharp mind. So I'm not surprised at all with the progress he's making. I think he's going to continue to make strides because he's one of those guys, he gets a kick out of like adding something to his game. So next season at this time, he'll be doing something that he's not doing right now. And then the next season, then the next season. So happy for him and his family, and I think it's pretty cool that they're retiring his jersey, over at St. Stephen's.
Two last ones.
Shaka, on your rotation, how do you find the balance between getting your young guys experience like Donovan and Will, and keeping the 5 guys on the floor who are going to give you the best chance to win?
It's a tough balance. I think the 3 freshmen we have, they have as much or more potential than anyone on our team. They really have a lot of upside and a chance to be very, very good. Now, that's long-term potential. That's not necessarily next week potential or even next month. It might be, but right now the balance is how do they play in practice? How competitive are they out there with their teammates? How well are they learning? How receptive are they? I really do think it's going to help them now with the semester being over. For freshmen, it's a battlefield of them in your mind when you got the exams for the first time and then the end of the semester and the stuff that we're throwing at them basketball-wise. So I think this next 5 weeks is going to be a valuable time. But the answer to your question is it's always evolving. I would love to see those guys earn more time. I'd love to see Will and Donovan do that kind of the way that Kai has. I mean, remember, Kai wasn't playing much at the very beginning of the year, and now in some of our recent games he's played 15, 16, 17 minutes.
Is it the same recipe for those guys to get on the court?
Same recipe. Yeah, I mean, their games are different, but same recipe. It starts in practice. It starts with the competitive effort that they bring, and then their ability to respond when it's tough, when they miss a shot, when a play doesn't go their way, and their ability to have a clarity of mind to do what we're asking them to do, knowing that it's not going to be perfect, but just to be clear with it. And that, again, different coaches are different, but for me, I can see it looking at a guy's face, if his mind is clear to go at least try to be the best he can be for Texas. And I think as long as we can move those guys forward in those ways, it's just a matter of time for them before they can be the players they want to be. But largely that responsibility lies on them, to take ownership of those things. And we're going to be there every step of the way to support them.